She was left for dead on a dusty California road in 1873, face down, ribs cracked, blood matted in her hair, vultures circling overhead, just waiting. The men who beat her? They worked for her own stepfather, a man so powerful no bounty hunter in Texas dared touch him. But here's what they didn't know. The night before, she had grabbed a knife and killed one of them. Now she's running, hiding a secret that could destroy an empire. And the only person who stops to help her? A former bounty hunter who hasn't spoken to another soul in 5 years because the last woman he loved died in his arms. 2 broken people, 1 impossible choice, and a love story that will either save them both or get them killed. This is Penelope and Xavier's story. What you'll gain from this story: a powerful reminder that your past doesn't define your future, that healing begins when broken souls choose to fight for each other instead of fighting alone. If this story moves you, drop a comment telling me, have you ever met someone who changed everything? Hit like if you believe in second chances. Share this with someone who needs hope today. And subscribe so you never miss another story that stays with you long after it ends. The August sun of 1873 blazed down on the California desert like the wrath of God himself. Heat shimmered off the red dirt road leading to Weaverville, making the distant mountains dance and blur. Vultures circled lazy overhead, patient as death, waiting for something below to stop breathing. Penelope James was trying very hard not to give them what they wanted. She lay face down in the dust, her once white dress torn to rags and stained rust brown with dried blood. Every breath sent fire through her cracked ribs. Her auburn hair, usually her pride, was matted with dirt, and the blood that had dried along her scalp where Marcus Webb had struck her with his pistol. The night before played through her mind in fragments. The abandoned cabin 30 miles from nowhere. 3 of her stepfather's men holding her captive. Marcus Webb, with that sickle-shaped scar across his cheek, telling her that Silas wanted her to die slow. Then the guard had caught her trying to escape. He had pinned her down, his breath hot and foul on her face, his intentions clear in his cruel eyes. She had fought, Lord help her. She had fought with everything she had. The knife had been his own. She had grabbed it during the struggle, and she had not hesitated. The blade had slid between his ribs easier than she expected. She still remembered the way his eyes had gone wide, the wet gurgle of his last breath, the hot blood spilling over her hands. She had killed a man. The other 2 had caught up to her before she made it a mile. They had beaten her savage and thorough, then left her in the road when distant gunshots spooked them. Night hunters, probably. They figured she would be dead before dawn. They had nearly been right. Penelope tried to move her fingers. They twitched weakly against the packed earth. Good. She was still alive, for now. The sound of hoofbeats reached her ears, muffled and distant at first, then growing closer. Part of her wanted to cry out for help. Another part, the part that had learned hard lessons about trusting strangers, told her to play dead and pray whoever it was rode on by. She did not get the choice. Her body was done listening to her. Everything went gray at the edges, then black. Xavier Hayes spotted the vultures first. He had been riding back from town, saddlebags heavy with horse medicine, and a few supplies he could not produce himself on the ranch. His mood was dark, same as always. He had avoided conversation with everyone in Weaverville, paid for his goods in as few words as possible, and gotten out before anyone could ask him questions he did not want to answer. 5 years he had lived like this. 5 years of solitude, of working himself to exhaustion every day so he could sleep without dreaming. 5 years since Emma. He did not think about Emma, not if he could help it. The vultures pulled him from his brooding. They were circling something about a quarter-mile ahead, just off the main road. Could be a dead animal. Could be discarded clothing. Could be nothing. But his instincts, honed by years of hunting men across the Texas Badlands, told him it was something else. Xavier clicked his tongue and urged his mare forward. As he drew closer, the shape on the ground resolved itself into something that made his stomach clench. A woman, face down, not moving. He dismounted before his horse had fully stopped, boots hitting the dirt as he knelt beside her. She was young, maybe mid-20s. Auburn hair, the color of autumn leaves, turned dark with blood. Her dress had been white once. Now it looked like a butcher's apron. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for her neck, feeling for a pulse. The trembling was not from fear. It was the memory hitting him like a fist to the gut. Emma lying still and pale in his arms, her blood hot on his hands, her eyes going glassy as she whispered that she forgave him. Stop it. Focus. There. A pulse. Weak and thready, but present. She was alive. Xavier turned her over gently, cataloging her injuries with a practiced eye. Swollen face, split lip, one eye blackened and puffed shut, ribs probably cracked from the way she breathed in short, pained gasps, and her hands. He looked closer at her hands, defensive wounds, deep cuts on her palms and fingers, the kind you got when you grabbed a blade bare-handed or blocked someone trying to cut you. This woman had fought back, hard. Do not get involved, a voice in his head warned. She is not your problem. Put her down and ride on. Her eyes fluttered open, just for a moment. Just long enough for him to see that they were green. Sea green, like spring grass after rain. They focused on nothing, saw nothing. But in that moment she made a sound. Not quite a word. Almost like his name, if his name was Marcus. She was terrified of someone named Marcus. Xavier cursed under his breath. He was going to regret this. He knew he was going to regret this. He lifted her as gentle as he could manage, wincing when she whimpered in pain, and settled her across his saddle before mounting up behind her. She was light in his arms. Too light. When had she last eaten? Not your concern, the voice reminded him. Get her patched up and send her on her way. The ride back to Pine Creek Ranch took longer than usual. He kept the pace slow and steady, not wanting to jostle her injuries. Every few minutes she would stir, sometimes crying out, sometimes striking weakly at his chest, once calling out that name again. Marcus. Stop. Please. She was caught in memories, reliving whatever hell had put her in that road. Xavier held her firm but gentle, keeping her from hurting herself further. I am not your enemy, he said, his voice rough from disuse. Be still. She did not hear him. Not really. But something in his tone must have reached her because she stopped fighting and went limp against his chest. Her fingers curled into his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a world gone to pieces. Pine Creek Ranch came into view as the afternoon wore on. It was not much to look at. Two-story house, white paint faded by sun and wind. Large stable that smelled of hay and horse sweat. Old windmill creaking in the breeze. The Sierra Nevada mountains rising snow-capped in the distance. It was not much, but it was his, the place where he had come to forget. The place where he had buried Xavier Hayes, the bounty hunter, and tried to become someone else. Mrs. Finch came running out before he had even dismounted. She was a stout woman in her 50s with silver hair pulled tight in a bun and hands that always seemed dusted with flour. She had worked for his family since he was a boy, and when he fled Texas, she had followed without being asked. Merciful heavens, she exclaimed, her eyes going wide at the sight of the woman in his arms. Another broken bird, Xavier? You planning to open a rescue shelter? Just patch her up, he said, dismounting carefully with his burden. When she is well enough, she leaves. Mrs. Finch gave him a look that said she saw right through him, same as always. But she did not argue, just led the way inside, already rolling up her sleeves. The spare bedroom was small but clean. Xavier laid the woman down on the iron-framed bed and stepped back while Mrs. Finch took over, shooing him toward the door. Out, she ordered. This is not work for a man to see. Xavier went, but he lingered in the hallway, unable to fully walk away. Through the door he could hear Mrs. Finch murmuring soothing words, the sound of water being wrung from cloth, the occasional pained gasp from the injured woman. He should go see to his horse. He should check the fencing in the south pasture. He should do anything other than stand here like a fool, worrying over a stranger. But he did not move. Near an hour later, Mrs. Finch emerged. Her face was grim. "She has had a terrible beating," she reported. 3 cracked ribs by my count. That eye is swollen shut, and she is covered head to toe in bruises. But that is not the worst of it. Xavier waited. There are old scars on her back, whip marks, years healed over. This girl has been living in hell for a long time, Xavier. Whatever happened to her last night, it was not the first time someone hurt her. The anger that rose in him was unexpected, hot and sharp, coiling in his chest like a snake. He did not know this woman, had no reason to care what had been done to her. But the thought of someone taking a whip to her back, of someone beating her and leaving her for dead in the road, made him want to find whoever was responsible and make them pay. He squashed the feeling down. That was the old Xavier thinking. The bounty hunter, the killer. That man was dead. "Will she live?" he asked instead. "I believe so, with rest and care. But she needs watching tonight. The fever might take her if we are not careful." Xavier nodded. "I will sit with her." "That is not proper," Mrs. Finch protested, though without much heat. "I will sit in the chair by the door, just to be on hand if she wakes frightened." Mrs. Finch studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Call me if there is any change." She left him there in the hallway, and Xavier settled into the wooden chair outside the spare room door. Through the gap he could see the woman lying still on the bed, her chest rising and falling in shallow rhythm. He did not know her name, did not know where she came from or who had hurt her, did not know if she was innocent or guilty of whatever had brought her to that road. But he had found her, and despite every instinct telling him to keep his distance, he could not simply walk away. The night stretched on, long and dark and full of questions he did not have answers to. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that his carefully constructed solitude was about to come crashing down around his ears. Penelope woke to pain. It was everywhere. Her ribs screamed with every breath. Her face throbbed with the steady beat of her heart. Her hands ached where the knife had cut them, and her shoulder felt like someone had tried to pull her arm from its socket. She opened her eyes. One of them, anyway. The other was swollen shut. The room was unfamiliar. Plain wooden walls, a patchwork quilt on the bed beneath her. Afternoon sunlight streaming through a small window. She was wearing a clean nightgown that did not belong to her. Someone had washed the blood from her face and wrapped bandages around her ribs. Where was she? How had she gotten here? Memory returned in pieces. The road, the vultures circling. A man on horseback, his voice rough but not unkind. The steady rhythm of hoofbeats as darkness claimed her. Panic seized her chest. She did not know this place, did not know who had brought her here. For all she knew, Marcus had found her and delivered her to Silas as ordered. She tried to sit up. Her ribs had other ideas. Pain lanced through her, and she fell back with a gasp that turned into a sob. "Easy now," a woman's voice said. "You will tear yourself open again, moving like that." Penelope turned her head. A stout older woman stood in the doorway, carrying a tray with a bowl of something steaming. She had a kind face, weathered by years and work, and eyes that had seen enough of life to not be shocked by much anymore. "Where am I?" Penelope managed. Her throat was raw, her voice barely a whisper. "Pine Creek Ranch," the woman answered, setting the tray on a small table beside the bed. "About 10 miles from Weaverville. You were found on the road half dead. The boss brought you back here." "The boss?" "Xavier Hayes owns this spread." The woman settled into a chair beside the bed and began spooning broth from the bowl. "Drink this. You have been out for near 2 days. Need to get something in you." Penelope did not argue. She was too weak to argue. She let the woman feed her broth 1 spoonful at a time, each swallow an effort but warming her from the inside. Between spoonfuls, she managed to ask, "Who are you?" Martha Finch, housekeeper, cook, and general keeper of sense around here. Been with the Hayes family since Xavier was in short pants. She paused, studying Penelope with sharp eyes. And who might you be, girl? Penelope hesitated. Every instinct told her to lie, to give a false name, to reveal nothing. But this woman had helped her, had bandaged her wounds and put her in a clean bed and was now feeding her broth with patient hands. Penelope, she said finally. Penelope James. Mrs. Finch nodded as if she had expected as much. Well, Miss James, you were beaten like a dog and left to die. But you are still breathing. That means you are tougher than whoever did this gave you credit for. Something in her matter-of-fact tone made tears prick at Penelope's eyes. She blinked them back. She would not cry. Not now. Not here. This man who found me, she said instead. Mr. Hayes? Will he want answers? He has not asked any questions yet. Mrs. Finch's expression was unreadable. But I expect he will eventually. Xavier is not one for company or involvement. The fact that he brought you back at all means something, though I could not tell you what. What is he like? Mrs. Finch was quiet for a moment. Then she said, he was a different man once, open, quick to laugh, had a woman he loved and a future he was building toward. Then something happened, and all that died. Now he lives like a ghost on his own land. Does not speak more than he has to. Does not let anyone close. That sounded lonely, Penelope thought. That sounded like her own life before she had run. She finished the broth and let Mrs. Finch help her lie back against the pillows. Sleep was pulling at her again, heavy and insistent. Rest now, Mrs. Finch said, rising. Healing takes time. We will talk more when you are stronger. She left, closing the door softly behind her. Penelope stared at the ceiling, her mind churning despite her exhaustion. She was safe, for now. But Silas would not stop looking for her, Marcus would not stop hunting, and sooner or later they would find this place. She needed to get stronger, needed to get the evidence she had hidden to someone who could use it. Needed to end this before anyone else got hurt because of her, but right now she could barely lift her head. One thing at a time, she told herself. Survive today, worry about tomorrow when it comes. She closed her eyes and let sleep take her. Xavier was avoiding the house. He had been doing it for 3 days now, ever since he had carried the woman inside and left her in Mrs. Finch's capable hands. He rose before dawn, ate his breakfast in the barn, and spent his days working the land until exhaustion drove him to bed. There was always work on a ranch. Fence posts to mend, a wild Mustang named Shadow who needed breaking, cattle to check on, calves to brand. He threw himself into all of it with a single-minded focus that left no room for thinking about the woman in his spare room. But Liam was not fooled. Liam Ford was his right-hand man, 28 years old with sun-darkened skin and an easy smile that Xavier found alternately reassuring and aggravating. He had been with Pine Creek Ranch for 3 years now and was one of maybe 2 people in the world who knew the truth about Xavier's past. He was also entirely too observant for his own good. Heard you brought home a pretty lady, Liam said on the 3rd morning, falling into step beside Xavier as he headed for the south pasture. Finally something interesting happening on this godforsaken ranch. She will be gone when she is healed. Xavier did not slow his pace. Do not get ideas. What kind of ideas would I be getting? The kind you always get. The kind that end with you making a fool of yourself and me having to clean up the mess. Liam laughed. That is fair. But still, a mysterious woman beaten half to death on the road? That is the stuff of dime novels, boss. You are not even a little bit curious who did that to her? Xavier said nothing, but his grip on the fence rail he was carrying tightened enough to whiten his knuckles. She is someone else's problem, he said finally. I did my good deed. Now she heals up and moves on, if you say so. I do say so. But even as the words left his mouth, Xavier knew he was lying. To Liam, to himself. Because he was curious, more than curious. And no matter how much work he buried himself in, he could not stop thinking about those sea-green eyes opening on the road and looking at him like he was either salvation or damnation. He did not know which one he was anymore. The nightmare came on the second night. Penelope was back in the cabin. Marcus was there, his scar twisting as he smiled. One of his men was holding her down, breath hot on her face, hands tearing at her clothes. She was screaming, but no sound came out. She was fighting, but her arms would not move. Then the knife was in her hand, and she was striking, and there was blood everywhere, so much blood. And the man's eyes were going wide, and his mouth was opening and closing like a fish pulled from water. And she could not stop. She could not stop. She could not stop. She woke with a scream lodged in her throat. The room was dark. She had thrown off her blankets at some point and was drenched in cold sweat. Her ribs shrieked as she tried to sit up, and for a moment she did not know where she was. Then a voice came from the doorway, low and rough but steady. "You are at Pine Creek Ranch. Safe. No one is here but us." Penelope's eyes found him in the darkness. A tall figure seated in a chair just outside her door, barely visible in the moonlight. The man who had rescued her. Xavier Hayes. "How long have you been there?" she asked, her voice shaking. "A while." His tone gave nothing away. "You were thrashing in your sleep, calling out. What did I say?" "A name, Marcus. And something about blood." Penelope closed her eyes. The memory of the knife, the man's final breath, the weight of what she had done, it all pressed down on her like a physical force. "They hurt me," she said. The words came out before she could stop them. "I got away." Xavier did not push, did not ask who they were or why they had hurt her or how she had gotten away. He just sat there, a solid presence in the darkness, and let the silence stretch. Finally, he said, "You are safe now. That is what matters." She wanted to believe him. Lord, how she wanted to believe that she could be safe, could stop running, could rest. But she knew better. Silas never let go of what he considered his. And as long as she was alive and free, she was a threat to everything he had built. "Thank you," she whispered, "for finding me, for bringing me here." "Get some sleep," he said, instead of acknowledging her gratitude. "Mrs. Finch will check on you in the morning." He did not leave. She could hear him settling back into the chair, keeping watch, like a guardian, like a protector. Penelope lay back against the pillows and stared at the ceiling. Sleep felt impossible now, with the nightmare still clinging to the edges of her mind. But somehow, knowing he was there, she felt herself beginning to drift. She was not alone. For the first time in years, she was not alone. A week passed. Penelope grew stronger day by day. The swelling in her face went down. Her cracked ribs began to knit. She could move around the house now, slowly and carefully, though anything more strenuous than walking left her winded and aching. Mrs. Finch put her to work on light tasks, picking vegetables from the kitchen garden, drying herbs by the window, mending clothes that had accumulated in a basket for who knew how long. It felt good to be useful, even in small ways. It kept her mind occupied, kept her from thinking too hard about what was coming, because something was coming. She could feel it in her bones, a storm building on the horizon. Marcus was out there somewhere, looking for her. And when he found her, when he reported back to Silas, everything would come crashing down. But for now, she had this. The quiet rhythm of ranch life, the smell of hay and horses and fresh-baked bread, the mountains rising purple and gold in the distance. A kind of peace she had not known in years. And Xavier Hayes, who remained a mystery she could not stop trying to solve. He avoided her. That much was obvious. He left the house before sunrise and did not return until after dark. He took his meals in the barn or out on the range. On the rare occasions their paths crossed, he would give her a curt nod and nothing more before disappearing again. But sometimes, late at night when she could not sleep, she would hear the creak of the floorboards outside her door, would see the shadow of him in the chair where he kept his vigil. He never spoke to her during those hours, never let her know he was there, but she knew. And somehow that silent guardianship said more than words ever could. "What happened to him?" she asked Mrs. Finch one afternoon. They were in the kitchen preparing supper, and Xavier was off checking the cattle in some distant pasture. Mrs. Finch's hands paused in their kneading of bread dough. Then she resumed, her movements slower and more deliberate than before. "That is his story to tell," she said. "When and if he chooses." Penelope nodded, accepting the boundary. But she could not help adding, "He seems so alone." "He has been alone for 5 years now. By choice, mostly. Some wounds do not heal easy, Miss James. Some guilt does not fade." "Guilt?" Mrs. Finch looked at her with those sharp, knowing eyes. "We all carry things we are not proud of, things we would give anything to undo. Xavier carries more than most." She did not elaborate further, and Penelope did not push. But the words stayed with her, turning over in her mind. What had Xavier done that weighed on him so heavily? What drove him to live like a hermit on the edge of nowhere, punishing himself with work and solitude? She thought of her own guilt, the man she had killed, the blood on her hands, the way his eyes had looked as the life left them. Maybe she understood Xavier Hayes better than she realized. The horse was called Shadow, and he was magnificent. Penelope first saw him properly on her 8th day at the ranch. She had been walking around the property building her strength when she heard sounds from the large corral behind the stable, snorting, the thud of hooves against wood. A man's voice, low and steady. She made her way to the fence and stopped, transfixed. The Mustang was black as midnight, all muscle and fury. He reared and kicked, eyes rolling white with fear and rage, clearly wild and determined to stay that way. And there in the center of the corral was Xavier, arms loose at his sides, making no move to chase or capture. He was just talking to the horse. She could not hear the words from this distance, but she could see the patience in his stance, the calm in his movements. He was not trying to break the horse. He was trying to earn its trust. It was the first time she had truly watched him, and what she saw surprised her. This was not the cold, closed-off man who avoided her at every turn. This was someone gentle, patient, someone who understood what it meant to be afraid and alone. The horse continued to fight, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, his circles grew smaller. His kicks grew less frequent. He was still wild, still dangerous, but something in Xavier's presence was getting through to him. Penelope watched until her legs grew tired, then made her way back to the house. But the image stayed with her. Xavier standing calm in the face of fury, waiting for the storm to pass, believing that even the most damaged creature could learn to trust again. Maybe he was not so different from that horse. Maybe neither was she. That night, unable to sleep, she made her way to the front porch. He was already there. Of course he was. Sitting in a wooden chair with a bottle of whiskey beside him, untouched, staring out at the moonlit pastures. He looked up when she appeared. Something flickered in his gray eyes, gone too quick to name. "Should you be out of bed?" he asked. His voice was rough from disuse. "Probably not." She lowered herself carefully into the chair beside him, mindful of her ribs. "But I could not sleep. Nightmares, something like that." Silence stretched between them. Not uncomfortable, just present, like two strangers learning the shape of each other without words. Finally, Penelope said, "You do not drink it." Xavier glanced at the whiskey bottle. "No. Then why keep it there?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "To remind myself I can control at least one thing." She understood that. The need to prove to yourself that you still had choices, that you were not completely at the mercy of your demons. "You have not asked who I am," she said. "Why I was beaten. Who did it? You have not asked why I live alone in the middle of nowhere. Fair point." She pulled her shawl tighter against the night chill. "I figured you would tell me when you wanted. Or never. Either is fine." He turned to look at her then. Really look, not the quick glances he usually gave before turning away. Moonlight caught the scar on his chin, silvered his dark hair, made his eyes gleam like storm clouds. "Same," he said. Something passed between them in that moment. An understanding. A recognition of kindred spirits, both broken in their own ways, both trying to survive. "You should go inside," he said finally. "Getting cold." "So should you." His lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. "I am used to cold." No one is truly used to cold. Penelope rose slowly, steadying herself on the porch railing. People just pretend they do not feel it. She left him there, staring after her, and though she could not see his face, she could feel his gaze on her back all the way to the door. The miners came 2 days later. There were 4 of them, rough men with hungry eyes claiming to be looking for work. Xavier turned them away at the gate, saying he had no positions to fill, but not before one of them, younger than the others with a shifty look about him, caught sight of Penelope on the porch. She ducked back inside quickly, heart hammering. But she had seen the recognition that flickered in his eyes, the way his gaze sharpened. He had seen her before, or seen something that made her notable. A poster, maybe. A description. "They know," she said when Xavier came inside. "Or they suspect." Xavier's jaw was tight. "The young one." "Yes." He looked at me like he knew something. Xavier was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Stay inside. I am riding to town." "Why?" "To see what they know. What is being said." He left before she could argue, and Penelope spent the rest of the day pacing the parlor, too anxious to sit still. Mrs. Finch tried to distract her with tasks, with conversation, but nothing worked. When Xavier returned at sunset, his expression was grim. "There are posters," he said, "in some of the mining towns north of here. Auburn-haired woman, wanted for questioning in connection with a theft in Sacramento. No name, but the description is close enough." Penelope sank into a chair. "So they know I am out here somewhere. They suspect. Nothing certain yet." Xavier crossed to the window, looking out at the darkening land. "But it will not take long for word to spread. If someone saw you here, if they talk to the wrong people." "I should go," she said. The words hurt to speak, but they were true. "Before I bring trouble to your door." Xavier turned to face her. His expression was unreadable in the dim light. "Where would you go?" "I do not know. Somewhere. Anywhere." He studied her for a long moment. Then he shook his head. "No. No. You are in no shape to travel. And whoever is looking for you, they will find you a lot faster if you are wandering the roads alone. So what do you suggest?" "I suggest you stay here. Stay out of sight. And tell me what I am dealing with. Because if trouble is coming, I need to know what shape it is going to take." Penelope looked at this man, this stranger who had saved her life and was now offering to protect her from dangers he did not even understand. She should lie. Should give him some easy story that would satisfy his curiosity without revealing the truth. It was safer that way, for both of them. But looking into those storm-gray eyes, she found she could not do it. "My stepfather is Silas Crane," she said. "And when I tell you what he is, you will understand why I am running." The story came out in pieces. Penelope told him about Silas Crane, the man who had married her mother when Penelope was 15. How he had seemed like salvation at first. A wealthy businessman who swept them from poverty into a life of comfort and security. How it had taken years for his true nature to reveal itself. Gambling, loan sharking, smuggling, and worse, though she did not name it yet, could not make herself say the words about what Silas did to the women he traded like livestock. She told him about her mother, how Margaret had discovered the truth about her husband and tried to flee, how there had been a carriage accident that was not an accident at all, how Penelope had known, had seen the bruises on her mother's body that no mere accident could explain, but had no way to prove what Silas had done. "I gathered evidence," she said. "For 3 years I watched and waited and collected proof. Ledgers, letters, lists of names, everything I would need to bring him down. And then, Penelope's hands clenched in her lap. And then, he caught me. Xavier listened in silence through all of it. His face gave nothing away, but she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw tightened at certain details, the barely contained fury in his eyes. When she finished, he asked, "Where is the evidence now?" "Hidden. In Sacramento with a friend of my mother's. Someone Silas does not know about." "And Marcus Webb? The man you called out for in your nightmares?" Penelope flinched at the name. Silas's right hand. His enforcer. He was the one who caught me, who brought me out here to... She could not finish the sentence. "To kill you?" "Yes." Xavier was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Silas Crane. I know that name." Penelope's heart stuttered. "You know him?" "Know of him. From another life. He had a $10,000 bounty on his head in Texas 5 years ago. No one dared try to collect." She stared at him. "Another life?" He met her eyes. "I was a bounty hunter. Before I came here. Before I became whoever I am now." It explained so much. The watchfulness in him, the way he moved, the calm competence with which he handled danger. He was not just a rancher hiding from the world. He was a hunter who had put down his weapons. "Why did you stop?" she asked. His face shuddered. "That is a story for another time." She did not push. He had given her honesty. She would give him patience in return. "So, you know what we are dealing with," she said instead. "You know how dangerous Silas is." "I know. And you still want me to stay?" Xavier rose from his chair and crossed to the window, staring out at the night. For a long moment he did not speak. Then he said, "5 years ago, I stopped being the kind of man who got involved in other people's problems. I came here to disappear, to forget, to stop caring about anything beyond my own survival." Penelope waited. He turned to face her. "But then I found you on that road, half dead, fighting to survive, and something in me, something I thought I had buried, would not let me ride on by." "What are you saying?" "I am saying that your fight is my fight now, whether I want it to be or not." The words hung in the air between them. Penelope felt tears prick at her eyes and blinked them back. She had been alone for so long, had carried this weight by herself for years, and now, unexpectedly, impossibly, she had an ally. "You barely know me," she whispered. "I know enough. And if this gets you killed?" Something shifted in his expression, something raw and painful, quickly hidden. "Everyone dies eventually," he said. "Might as well be for something that matters." Learning to ride was harder than Penelope had expected. The horse Xavier chose for her was an old mare named Buttercup, sweet-tempered and patient. But Penelope had never spent much time around horses, and her body was still healing, and the combination made for slow, frustrating progress. "She is 1,000 years old," Penelope said on the third day, after Buttercup had ignored yet another command and wandered in lazy circles around the paddock. "I think she's forgotten what running means." Xavier leaned against the fence, arms crossed, watching her struggle. His lips twitched. "She is testing you," he said, "seeing if you are worth listening to. And clearly she has decided I am not. You need to show her you mean it. Be firm. Consistent. I am being firm. You are being polite. There is a difference." Penelope gritted her teeth and tried again. This time she put steel in her voice, steel in her posture, and miracle of miracles, Buttercup actually responded. The mare began a sedate trot around the paddock, and Penelope felt a rush of triumph that was probably excessive given the circumstances. "Better," Xavier said. She looked at him, really looked for the first time in days. The afternoon sun caught the silver in his hair, highlighted the scar on his chin, softened the hard lines of his face. He was handsome, she realized with a start. Not in the obvious way, not the smooth charm that Silas could turn on when it suited him, but in a real way. A weathered, honest, lived-in way. He caught her staring and raised an eyebrow. She looked away quickly, cheeks heating. Keep practicing, she told herself. Focus on the horse. But she could feel his gaze on her for a long time after. The moment came unexpectedly. She had been grooming Buttercup in the stable, learning the rhythm of brushstrokes and quiet murmurs that kept the horse calm. Xavier was working nearby, mending a saddle, and they had fallen into a comfortable silence. Then Penelope reached for the curry comb on the high shelf and lost her balance. Her still healing ribs shrieked in protest, and she stumbled backward. Xavier caught her. His arms came around her waist, steadying her. Her back pressed against his chest. She could feel the heat of him through her dress, the solid strength that held her upright. Neither of them moved. His breath was warm on her hair. His hands were large and calloused and impossibly gentle. Her heart was pounding so hard she was certain he could feel it. "Careful," he said. His voice was rougher than usual. "I am always careful." "No. You are always reckless. There is a difference. She should pull away, should put proper distance between them. But something held her in place. Some current running between them that she could not name but could not ignore. Then Xavier released her, stepping back. His face was closed off again. The moment of connection shattered. "Getting late," he said. "You should go inside." He left before she could respond. And Penelope stood in the empty stable, pulse racing, trying to convince herself that what she had felt was nothing. It did not work. That night, Mrs. Finch told her the truth. They were in the kitchen, cleaning up after supper. Xavier had eaten in the barn, same as always, and Penelope had tried not to let his absence sting. "You are curious about him," Mrs. Finch said. It was not a question. Penelope considered denying it. Decided there was no point. He is hard to figure out. Mrs. Finch nodded. She dried a plate, set it aside, picked up another. 5 years ago, Xavier was a different man. Quick to laugh, full of plans. He had a woman he loved, a pretty thing named Emma. They were going to be married. What happened? Mrs. Finch was quiet for a long moment. "He was a bounty hunter," she said finally. "One of the best in Texas. Tracked the worst men across the Badlands and brought them to justice. He was going to retire after one last job. Was going to hang up his guns and start a new life with Emma, but he did not retire. No. The last job went wrong. A serial killer named Jack Redmond. He took Emma hostage, used her as a shield." Penelope's stomach clenched. She knew where this was going, knew it in her bones. "Xavier took the shot," Mrs. Finch continued. "The bullet went through Redmond and through Emma. Oh, God. She died in his arms, told him she forgave him. But he has never forgiven himself, never stopped believing that he killed the woman he loved." Penelope thought of Xavier keeping vigil outside her door, of his careful distance, of the way he looked at her sometimes, like he wanted something he did not believe he deserved. "He thinks he is cursed," she said, "thinks anyone who gets close to him will be hurt. He is afraid," Mrs. Finch said simply, "of caring again, of losing again, of being the cause of another death." Penelope understood that fear, understood it better than Mrs. Finch could possibly know, because she carried her own killing inside her own guilt, her own certainty that she was damaged beyond repair. Maybe that was why she felt so drawn to him. Maybe Broken recognized Broken. Or maybe, just maybe, they could help each other become whole again. The truth came out in the darkness. It was past midnight. Penelope had woken from another nightmare, the worst one yet. Marcus's face, the knife in her hand, the blood, the dying man's eyes fixed on hers as the life left them. But this time, when she woke screaming, Xavier was already there. He burst through the door before her cries had fully faded, moving to her bedside with the instinct of a man who had spent years responding to danger. His hands found her shoulders, steadying her. "Penelope, you are safe. You are here with me." She was shaking, could not stop shaking. The nightmare had its claws in her still, blurring the line between past and present. "I killed him," she gasped. The words ripped out of her before she could stop them. I killed him. There was so much blood. Xavier went very still. Killed who? She tried to pull away, tried to take it back. But he held her firm, not hurting, just present, anchoring her to the real world. When I escaped, she whispered, it was not just running. One of Marcus's men caught me. He was going to. She could not finish. I had a knife, his knife, and I... Xavier's hands tightened briefly on her shoulders, then relaxed. You defended yourself. I killed him, Xavier. I felt the blade go in. I watched him die. The tears came then. She had held them back for weeks, months, years. But now they broke free, sobs tearing through her, and Xavier pulled her against his chest and held her while she wept. What if I am like Silas? She choked out. What if there is something wrong inside me? Listen to me. His voice was rough, urgent. Silas chooses to hurt people. You chose to survive. That is not the same thing. That will never be the same thing. How do you know? Because I have killed more men than I can count, and I asked myself that same question every single time. She looked up at him. His face was close to hers, moonlight silvering his features, his eyes full of something she could not name. What answer did you find? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, that the killing is not what makes you a monster. It is what you feel after. And the fact that you feel guilty, that it haunts you, that means you are still human, still good. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it ached. You do not know that I am good. I know enough. The same words he had said before. But this time, they meant something different. This time she believed them. Stay, she whispered. Please, just until I fall asleep. Xavier hesitated. She could see the war in him, the pull between what he wanted and what he thought he should do. Then he nodded. He settled into the chair beside her bed, close enough that she could reach out and touch him if she needed to. She lay back against the pillows, exhaustion dragging at her, but feeling lighter than she had in weeks. Xavier? Yes, Xavier. I am glad you found me. He was quiet for so long she thought he would not answer. Then softly, go to sleep, Penelope. She did. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, she did not dream. Morning brought a shift between them. Nothing overt, nothing that could be named. But something had changed in the night. The careful distance Xavier had maintained was still there, but thinner now, more permeable. He sat with them for breakfast instead of eating in the barn. He met her eyes when they spoke instead of looking away. And when Mrs. Finch made a comment about the weather, Penelope could have sworn she saw the corner of his mouth twitch toward a smile. The days that followed took on a new rhythm. Xavier began teaching her practical skills, things she would need if trouble came. How to load and fire a pistol, how to saddle a horse quickly, how to read the land and find water if she was ever lost. She was a quick learner. Quicker than he expected, she thought, based on the grudging approval that sometimes flickered in his eyes. And slowly, carefully, they began to talk. He told her about Texas, about his years as a bounty hunter, tracking murderers and thieves across the endless plains, about the satisfaction of bringing bad men to justice, and the toll it took on his soul. She told him about Sacramento, about growing up in Silas's shadow, watching her mother wither under his control, about the day she had finally stopped being afraid and started fighting back. They did not talk about Emma, did not talk about the man Penelope had killed. Some wounds were still too raw, but they talked about everything else. And in the talking, something grew between them, something neither was ready to name. The tension broke on a warm evening in the barn. Penelope was grooming Buttercup, talking softly to the old mare the way Xavier had taught her. He was working nearby on some piece of tack, close enough that she could hear him humming under his breath. She did not know he hummed. It was such a human thing, such an unexpected glimpse of the man beneath the walls. The barn was warm and quiet and golden with lamplight. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the mountains in shades of fire. It felt like the world had narrowed to just this moment, just the two of them. Penelope set down the brush and turned to say something. She never remembered what, and found Xavier standing much closer than she had realized. He had moved without her noticing, drawn by some gravity she could not see. They stood there, barely a foot apart, and the air between them seemed to thicken. "Penelope," he said. His voice was rough. "Yes? I need you to understand something. What happened to me before? What happened to Emma?" "I cannot." He stopped, started again. "I am not a man who should be wanting things." Her heart was pounding. "What things?" He did not answer with words. Instead, slowly, giving her time to pull away, he raised his hand and touched her cheek. His fingers were warm and calloused and gentle. She leaned into the touch without thinking, her eyes never leaving his. "I should not want this," he said. "But you do. God help me." "Yes." "Then stop fighting it." She rose on her toes and kissed him. For a moment he was frozen, like a man who had forgotten what this felt like. Then his arms came around her and he was kissing her back, desperate and tender all at once. The kiss tasted like hope, like healing, like the first warm day after a long winter. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "We should not have done that," he said. "Probably not. It complicates things." "It does. I cannot promise I will not get you killed." "I know." He pulled back to look at her. His eyes were storm gray and full of wonder. "You are a stubborn woman, Penelope James." She smiled. "And you are a difficult man, Xavier Hayes." He kissed her again. And for that moment, that perfect stolen moment, nothing else mattered. The decision came 3 days after the kiss. They were sitting on the porch at sunset, close enough that their shoulders touched, watching the mountains turn purple and gold. It had become their ritual now, these evening hours, a time to simply be together without pretense or walls. But tonight, Penelope had something to say. "I cannot hide forever," she said. Xavier did not look at her, but she felt him tense. "I know. Those ledgers I stole. They are still with Evelyn in Sacramento. As long as they exist, Silas will hunt me. But if I can get them to the right people, if I can expose what he is, then maybe you can stop running." "Yes." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "How do you plan to get to Sacramento without being caught? I was hoping you might have some ideas." He turned to look at her then. His face was serious, calculating, the face of the bounty hunter he had once been. "3 days' ride to Red Bluff. Then we take the train, disguise you as a widow in mourning. No one looks too closely at a woman in black." "We? You think I am letting you do this alone?" Her heart swelled. "I was not sure you would want to come. I told you before, your fight is my fight." She took his hand, lacing her fingers through his. He had big hands, strong hands, hands that had killed and built and protected. "Thank you," she said. "Do not thank me yet. We still have to survive." The preparations began the next morning. Xavier was thorough, methodical, the planning revealing a side of him Penelope had not fully seen. The bounty hunter emerging from years of dormancy, making lists of supplies, mapping routes, checking and rechecking weapons. He brought out a Colt .45 and a Winchester rifle from a locked chest in his room. The guns were well maintained, oiled and ready, clearly tended even if they had not been used. "Old habits," he said when he caught her looking. "Do you miss it? The life you had before?" He considered the question, parts of it, the purpose, the certainty of knowing who the bad men were and hunting them down. He paused, but not enough to go back. "What would make you go back?" His eyes met hers. "Something worth fighting for." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Liam tried to talk him out of it. They were in the barn, Xavier packing saddlebags while Liam watched with growing concern. "You are sure about this?" Liam asked. "Last time you protected someone." Xavier's hands stilled on the bags. "I know. She is not Emma. I know that too." "Then why go? Why risk yourself for a woman you have known barely a month?" Xavier straightened, turning to face his friend. "Because when I found her on that road, something in me woke up. Something I thought I had killed. And I would rather die trying to help her than go back to being dead inside." Liam was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Be careful, boss. I will try. And bring her back safe." Xavier looked toward the house where Penelope was saying goodbye to Mrs. Finch. "That," he said, "is a promise I intend to keep." Their last night at the ranch was bittersweet. Supper was quiet, filled with unspoken words. Mrs. Finch fussed over them both, packing extra food for the journey, reminding Xavier of a dozen small things he already knew. It was her way of saying she was afraid, her way of saying goodbye. After the dishes were cleared, Penelope found herself alone with Xavier on the porch. Their porch, their stolen hours. The stars were out in force, scattered across the black velvet sky like diamonds on a jeweler's cloth. The air was crisp and cool, carrying the scent of sage from the distant hills. "I am scared," Penelope admitted. Xavier did not offer empty comfort. "Of Silas? Of you getting hurt because of me? Of this ending before it really begins?" He turned to face her. In the starlight, his features were sharp and shadowed. "When I picked you up off that road," he said slowly, "I did not expect this. Did not expect you. I had made peace with being alone, with punishing myself for the rest of my days. And then you appeared, half dead and still fighting, and you ruined everything. Ruined. Made me want to live again. Made me remember what hope felt like." Penelope felt tears prick at her eyes. "Xavier, whatever happens in Sacramento, I need you to know something." He took her hands in his. "These past weeks, being with you, have been the best thing to happen to me in 5 years. You make me want to wake up each morning, make me believe that maybe I am not beyond redemption." She kissed him then, not gentle this time, desperate, full of all the fear and hope and longing that had built between them. When they finally separated, both breathless, Xavier rested his forehead against hers. "When this is over," he said, "will you stay here at the ranch? With me? Is that what you want?" "More than anything." She smiled through her tears. "Then yes. 1,000 times yes." They held each other as the night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring danger and uncertainty. But tonight, they had this connection, this promise. It would have to be enough. The journey began at dawn. They rode out as the sun crested the mountains, painting the world in shades of gold and rose. Penelope on Buttercup, Xavier on Shadow. Supplies enough for 3 days, weapons loaded and ready. Mrs. Finch stood on the porch watching them go. She did not wave, did not call out, just stood there solid and steady, a silent prayer for their safe return. Penelope looked back once. The ranch was already growing small in the distance. Home. That was what it had become to her. Home in a way no place had been since her mother died. She would come back. She had to believe that. She would come back. The first day passed without incident. They rode through valleys and across streams, following trails Xavier knew from his years of wandering. The landscape was beautiful, rugged and wild, so different from the manicured gardens of Sacramento. Penelope found herself relaxing into the rhythm of travel, the creak of leather, the steady clop of hooves, Xavier's solid presence beside her. It was almost peaceful. Almost. She could not quite shake the feeling that they were being watched, could not ignore the prickle at the back of her neck that said danger was near. But when she mentioned it to Xavier, he just nodded. "I feel it too," he said. "We are not alone out here. Marcus? Probably. Or men working for him. What do? We stay alert, and we do not let them catch us unawares." That night they camped beneath a rocky overhang, sheltered from view on 3 sides. Xavier took first watch while Penelope tried to sleep. She could not. Every sound made her jump. Every shift of shadow seemed like a threat. Finally, she gave up and went to sit beside Xavier at the mouth of their shelter. "Cannot sleep?" he asked. "Too many thoughts." He did not press, just shifted to make room for her, his arm coming around her shoulders. They sat like that for a long time, watching the stars wheel overhead. And despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the uncertainty, Penelope felt something close to peace. She was not alone anymore. Whatever came next, she would not face it alone. The ambush came on the 2nd day. They were riding through a narrow canyon, red rock walls rising high on either side. Xavier had been tense all morning, scanning the ridgelines, hand never far from his gun. "Something is wrong," he said. "Too quiet." Then the first shot rang out. The bullet chipped rock inches from Penelope's head. She ducked instinctively, heart hammering as more shots followed. "Get down!" Xavier shouted, yanking her off Buttercup and behind a large boulder. The horses bolted. More gunfire echoed off the canyon walls. Penelope could see figures on the rim above them, 5 at least, dark shapes silhouetted against the bright sky. Then a voice she knew all too well called down. "Miss James, come out now and your cowboy gets to live. Your father misses you terribly. He wants you home." Marcus Webb. He had found her. The canyon was a killing ground, and Marcus Webb knew it. Penelope crouched behind the boulder, heart pounding, as bullets kicked up dirt and rock chips all around them. Xavier was beside her, gun drawn, scanning the rim for targets. 5 of them, he said, maybe 6. High ground advantage. "Can we fight through?" "Not head on." He met her eyes. "When I tell you to run, you run east. Follow the canyon, do not look back." "I am not leaving you." "Penelope." His voice was hard. "If they take us both, we are dead anyway. You get clear, you find help, you come back with reinforcements. And what about you?" "I will hold them off. That is suicide. That is a chance, which is more than we have if we both stay here." More bullets struck their shelter. Marcus's voice echoed again. "Last chance, Miss James. Come out, or we start getting creative." Xavier's jaw tightened. "On my signal, you run. Do not stop for anything." He kissed her then, quick and fierce, a promise and a goodbye all at once. "I love you," he said. "I should have told you sooner." Before she could respond, he was moving, rising from behind the boulder, gun blazing, drawing fire away from her position. "Go!" he shouted. "Now!" Penelope ran. Xavier was not planning to die, but he was prepared for it. The bounty hunter instincts he had tried so hard to bury came roaring back. He fired with cold precision, dropping one of the gunmen on the rim, then another. His body moved without thought, rolling behind cover, returning fire, making himself the biggest threat so Penelope could escape. A bullet grazed his shoulder. He barely felt it. Another caught him in the thigh. He stumbled but kept shooting. Marcus was screaming orders above, fury in his voice. The cowboy was supposed to be easy pickings. 5 years retired, gone soft. Marcus had underestimated him. But there were still 3 guns on that rim, and Xavier was running low on ammunition. Penelope had made it around the bend in the canyon, out of sight. Good. Whatever happened now, she had a chance. He reloaded, fired again, heard someone cry out. Then a bullet slammed into his chest and the world went sideways. He hit the ground hard, could not breathe, could not move. Above him the sky was painfully blue. This is it, he thought. This is how I die. He thought of Emma, thought of the bullet that had killed her, thought of 5 years of punishing himself for a mistake he could never undo. Then he thought of Penelope, her green eyes, her stubborn courage, the way she had looked at him like he was worth something. Not yet, he told himself, not yet. He dragged himself behind another rock, found his gun, raised it with hands that shook. One more shot. Just one more. Penelope heard the gunfire stop. She had made it maybe half a mile down the canyon when the silence fell. For a long moment there was nothing, just the wind and her own ragged breathing and the terrible pounding of her heart. Then she heard footsteps, multiple sets, coming toward her. She should keep running. Xavier had told her to run, but she could not leave him, could not abandon the man she loved to die alone. She turned back. Xavier was still alive when she found him. Barely. He was slumped against a rock, blood soaking his shirt, gun still clutched in his hand. 3 bodies lay on the canyon floor. Marcus and one other had retreated, fled when they realized their ambush had gone sideways. Penelope dropped to her knees beside him. "You were supposed to run," he wheezed. "I did run. Then I came back." Stubborn woman. Difficult man. He tried to laugh, coughed blood instead. She tore strips from her petticoat, pressed them against his wounds. The bullet in his chest had missed his heart, she thought, but the blood loss was severe. He needed a doctor, needed help. "There is a woman," Xavier managed. "Clara Martinez, in Reading. Midwife. She can help." "How far?" "Half-day ride, maybe less. Can you make it?" His eyes met hers, gray like storm clouds, full of pain and determination. "For you?" "Yes." The ride to Reading nearly killed them both. Penelope had managed to catch Shadow, who had not bolted far. Getting Xavier into the saddle was agony. Keeping him there as they rode was worse. He drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes he talked to her, voice slurred. Sometimes he talked to Emma, begging forgiveness for sins old and new. Sometimes he was silent, so still she had to check his pulse to make sure he was breathing. She talked to him constantly, told him stories, told him about her childhood before Silas, told him about the first time she had seen the ocean, the way the waves had seemed to go on forever. "Stay with me," she begged. You promised you would come back for me." Clara Martinez was a small woman with sharp eyes and steady hands. She took one look at Xavier and started barking orders. "Get him inside, on the table. You girl, boil water. Now." For the next 3 hours, Penelope watched Clara work miracles with needle and thread and herbal poultices. The bullet came out, the bleeding stopped. Xavier's color went from gray to merely pale. "He will live," Clara said finally, washing blood from her hands. Stubborn fool. Should have died 3 times over. Penelope collapsed into a chair, exhaustion hitting her all at once. "Thank you." Clara studied her with those sharp eyes. "You are the one he found on the road, the one he has been protecting." "Yes. He came to me once, years ago, after the thing with his fiancée. I had never seen a man so broken." She paused. "He looks different now. Looks like someone woke him up." Penelope looked at Xavier, unconscious on the table, chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. "We woke each other up," she said. Xavier slept for 2 days. When he finally opened his eyes, Penelope was there, holding his hand. "You stayed," he said, voice weak but present. "Where else would I go?" "Sacramento." "The evidence?" "You should be. I am not going anywhere without you." He tried to sit up, failed, fell back with a groan. "The mission can wait until you are strong enough to travel." Penelope. "Do not argue with me, Xavier Hayes. You are stuck in that bed until Clara says otherwise." He looked at her. Really looked. And something in his eyes softened. "I love you," he said. "I do not think I said that properly before. You said it while bleeding to death in a canyon. Not the most romantic setting. It worked for me." She leaned down and kissed him gently. "I love you too," she whispered. "Now rest. We have a long road ahead." 3 weeks later, Xavier was well enough to travel, not fully healed. Clara made that clear with considerable scolding, but strong enough to ride, to shoot if needed, to finish what they had started. The plan had changed during his recovery. Marcus knew they were alive, knew they were coming. Going to Sacramento together was too dangerous. Xavier would go ahead alone, retrieve the evidence, make contact with people who could help. Penelope would follow 3 days behind. She hated the plan, hated being separated from him, but she understood the logic. If they traveled together, they would be easier to spot, easier to catch. "I will be careful," Xavier promised. "You better be." He kissed her thoroughly, mounted Shadow, looked back once. "3 days," he said. "Then you follow." She watched him ride away until he was a speck on the horizon. Then nothing. Sacramento in 1873 was chaos given form. Xavier moved through the crowded streets with his head down and his hat pulled low. He had shaved his beard, traded his ranch clothes for a merchant's vest, adopted the shuffle of a man with nothing to prove. No one looked at him twice. Evelyn Morris lived in a small house on the outskirts of town. She was 65 years old, sharp as a tack, and deeply suspicious of strangers. It took Xavier nearly an hour to convince her he was who he said he was. "Penelope sent me," he said for the 3rd time. "She told me about you, about the evidence you are keeping. And how do I know you are not one of Silas's men pretending? Because if I were, you would already be dead." Evelyn studied him. Then, slowly, she smiled. "Fair point. Come inside." The evidence was everything Penelope had promised, and more. Ledgers documenting years of illegal transactions, lists of names, letters between Silas and his accomplices, enough to bring down his entire operation. There was also a letter, sealed, addressed to Penelope in a woman's handwriting. "Her mother's," Evelyn said. "Margaret wrote it before she died. Made me promise to give it to Penelope when the time was right." Xavier did not open it. That was not his to read. "How do we get this to the authorities?" he asked. "I have already started." Evelyn's eyes gleamed. "Made copies. Sent them to 3 different people. Judge Thaddeus Blackwood here in Sacramento, the editor of the Tribune. A lawman in San Francisco." Xavier stared at her. "You have been planning this. For 3 years, child. Ever since Margaret died. I did not survive the Civil War by keeping all my ammunition in one place." Silas Crane knew he was coming. Knew he was... Xavier realized it too late. He had been careful leaving Evelyn's house, watching for surveillance, taking a winding route. But they were waiting for him anyway. Marcus Webb stepped out of an alley, 6 men behind him, the scar on his cheek twisted with his smile. "Mr. Hayes, my employer would like a word." Xavier's hand moved toward his gun, 6 weapons cocked in response. "I would not," Marcus said. "You are fast, but not that fast." There was nothing to do but submit. They bound his hands, marched him through back streets, delivered him to the largest house in Sacramento. Silas Crane was waiting. He was not what Xavier expected. 55 years old, snow-white hair, sea-green eyes, the exact shade of Penelope's. Dressed immaculately, speaking softly, every inch the refined gentleman. But his eyes were cold, empty. The eyes of a man who saw other people as objects to be used. "Mr. Hayes," he said, "I have heard so much about you. The legendary bounty hunter who gave it all up for love. Such a romantic story." Xavier said nothing. "You have caused me considerable trouble these past weeks. Stolen my property, killed my men, and now you have come to steal my evidence as well. Your stepdaughter is not your property." Silas smiled. That was when Xavier saw the monster beneath the mask. "She is my blood," Silas said. "Mine to do with as I please, just like her mother was. You killed Margaret. I disciplined her. She chose to die rather than accept her place. A pity. I had hoped Penelope would be smarter." He stepped closer. "Where is she?" Xavier met his eyes. "Far from you." The blow came fast. Marcus, stepping forward to backhand him across the face. Xavier tasted blood. "We will find her," Silas said calmly. "We always do. The question is whether you will be alive to watch when we bring her home." They threw him in the cellar, chained him to the wall, left him in darkness, and Xavier began to plan. Penelope arrived in Sacramento 3 days after Xavier. She knew immediately that something was wrong. The contact Xavier was supposed to leave for her at the hotel was not there. No message, no sign. She went to Evelyn Morris instead. "They took him," Evelyn said without preamble. "Silas's men, 2 days ago." Penelope felt the world tilt. "Is he alive?" "As far as I know. Silas likes to play with his prey before he kills it." "Where are they holding him?" "The mansion." "Where else?" The old woman gripped her arm. "You cannot go there alone. It is suicide." "I am not going alone." Judge Thaddeus Blackwood was 70 years old and had been fighting Silas Crane for a decade. He listened to Penelope's story with growing intensity. When she finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I received the documents from Evelyn," he said. "They are enough to bring him down, but I need time to coordinate with the state marshals. If we move too soon, Silas will slip away like he always does." "I do not have time. Xavier does not have time." The judge studied her. "You love this man." "Yes." "Enough to die for him? Enough to kill for him?" Something flickered in the old man's eyes. "Respect, maybe? Or recognition?" "I have a contact inside the mansion," he said, "a servant named Rosa. She can get you in." "But Penelope." "Yes?" "Whatever happens in there, do not let Silas get inside your head. He will try to break you. Do not let him." The mansion was beautiful and terrible. Penelope slipped through the servants' entrance with Rosa's help, moving through shadows toward the cellar where Xavier was held. Every step felt like walking into the jaws of a beast. She found him chained to the wall, beaten, bloody, but alive. "You came," he said when he saw her. "Stupid woman." "Stubborn woman," she corrected, working at his chains. "There is a difference." The locks gave way. Xavier slumped into her arms. "Can you walk?" "I can try." They made it to the tunnel Rosa had told her about. Made it halfway to freedom. Then the lights came on. Marcus stood behind them with 4 men, and beside him, calm and immaculate as ever, was Silas Crane. "My daughter," Silas said, "finally come home." The confrontation she had feared for years was finally here. Silas circled her like a predator, his sea-green eyes, her eyes fixed on her face. "You have been very troublesome," he said. "All this running and fighting, all this thinking you could escape. I am not your daughter. You are my blood, my flesh, whether you accept it or not." Penelope felt Xavier tense beside her. "What is he talking about?" Silas smiled. "She did not tell you. Our Penelope has secrets. Tell him, daughter. Tell him who you really are." The world narrowed to this moment, this revelation she had always feared. "Silas is my father," she said. "My biological father. He abandoned my mother when she was pregnant, then came back 20 years later to claim what he thought was his." Xavier was silent, processing. Silas stepped closer. "You see, Mr. Hayes? She is mine. My blood runs in her veins. The same capacity for violence, the same willingness to do whatever it takes. She killed a man, did you know? One of my own. Stabbed him without hesitation." "In self-defense," Penelope said. "Does it matter? Blood is blood. Violence is violence. You are more like me than you want to admit." "No." The word came from Xavier, weak but certain. "She is nothing like you," he said. "She kills to survive. You kill because you enjoy it. She feels guilt. You feel nothing. That is the difference between a survivor and a monster." Silas's mask slipped, just for a moment. Rage flashed in those cold eyes. "You think you know her? You think love can overcome blood? I think choice matters more than blood, and she chose to be good. Penelope looked at the man she loved, beaten and bloody and still fighting for her. I choose, she said. That is what you never understood, Silas. I choose who I am, and I choose to not be you. The rescue came at dawn. State marshals, summoned by Judge Blackwood, surrounded the mansion. Silas's men surrendered or fled. Marcus Webb tried to run and was shot down in the street, and Silas Crane, for the first time in his life, found himself in chains. You think this is the end, he snarled as they dragged him away. You are still my blood. You will never escape that. Penelope watched him go. The monster who had haunted her entire life finally brought low. You are wrong, she said quietly. I already have. The trial was swift and merciless. With Evelyn's evidence and the testimony of freed victims, Silas Crane was convicted of murder, trafficking, and corruption. The state of California sentenced him to hang. Penelope did not attend the execution. She did not need to. That chapter of her life was closed. She had already begun writing a new one. Pine Creek Ranch in springtime was the most beautiful place Penelope had ever seen. The pastures were green and rolling, dotted with wildflowers. The mountains rose snow-capped in the distance. The old windmill creaked its eternal song, and Xavier was waiting for her on the porch. His wounds had healed, leaving new scars to add to his collection. He was leaner than before, harder in some ways and softer in others, but his eyes, when they met hers, were full of light. "Welcome home," he said. Home. The word felt right in a way nothing ever had before. The wedding was small. Just Mrs. Finch and Liam and Clara Martinez, who had traveled from Reading to see them joined. Judge Blackwood officiated, having retired from the bench and moved west for his health. They exchanged vows at sunset, standing on the porch where they had shared so many quiet hours. The words were simple. The promises were not. I take you as you are, Xavier said. With all your scars and all your ghosts, I will stand beside you through whatever storms may come. And I take you, Penelope answered. The broken parts and the healing parts. I will be your home as long as you will have me. Forever then. Forever. He kissed her as the sun sank behind the mountains, and Penelope finally understood what it meant to be safe. 1 year later. Penelope rode alone along the red dirt road to Weaverville, the same road where Xavier had found her, bleeding and broken and half dead. She stopped at the exact spot. No blood now. No pain. Just dust and sun and the endless sky. She closed her eyes and remembered. The cold certainty that she was going to die, the hoofbeats growing closer. A stranger's voice asking if she could hear him. She smiled. Back at the ranch, Xavier was mending fences, same as always. Shadow stood beside him, docile as a lamb, the wildness long since gentled. He looked up when he heard her horse. His eyes, storm gray with flecks of gold, crinkled at the corners. Where did you go, he asked, visiting the past, to say goodbye? He nodded, understanding without explanation. That was one of the things she loved about him. He never demanded more than she was ready to give. That evening they sat together on the porch, watching the stars emerge. The whiskey bottle was still there. Xavier still did not drink it, still did not throw it away. Any regrets, Penelope asked, stopping that day? He was quiet for a moment, considering. Not one, he said. Best decision I ever made. And now, this quiet life, with me, with the ranch. Is it enough? He reached over and placed his palm gently on her belly. Where their child, their future, was growing. More than enough, he whispered. More than I ever dreamed. She leaned her head on his shoulder and watched the stars wheel overhead. A year ago, she had lain dying on a dusty road. Now she was living, truly living, for the first time in her life. Some people say home is a place. They are wrong. Home is when someone chooses to stop for you, and you choose to stay for them. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.